G'day guys, I'm Kyle here from Blackboard Coffee, and today I'm sitting with Simon Goodburn for our Good People chats. Firstly we'd like to start off with a question that we're going to be asking all the people that we interview, and Simon, we'd like to ask everyone what is their go-to coffee, and kind of what does that mean for you to start your day, or how do you enjoy it?
Yeah, so I'm a filter coffee guy, and it's definitely part of the morning ritual. So coincidentally, I do actually have a Blackboard subscription. But yeah, I love, like, probably my favourite things are like some of the African varietals. So I really love, and I'm a bit of I love like the flavour journey of different things. So like whether I'm drinking wine or whiskey or whatever, I'm always trying to like learn to decipher some of those little nuances within them. So yeah, typically I'll kind of make a Chemex, and then any kind of single origin stuff is a go-to for me. So it's pretty much the first thing I think about when I wake up, which I'm sure is like most people really. But particularly because we're in a creative environment and whatever, I love kind of the ritual of making it. It's a bit of a slow brew, and you've got to be patient, but you kind of like stinging to get your first sip, and then it's just really cool ritual for me.
I've been lucky enough to meet you a few times now, but for everyone else, I'd like you to sort of introduce yourself rather than me trying to tell people who you are and what you do. But just start with who you are and kind of what you're best known for, and just let everyone know.
Yeah, cool. So I grew up on the Gold Coast, primarily, kind of born in Sydney, and then spent like my early life there, and then I've been here for most of my life. I've lived overseas for different stints, but definitely a Gold Coast boy. And I'm now running my own business called Ribs and Dust, and we basically create like bespoke heirlooms and fine jewellery. So everything from keepsakes that you can pass on for generations, through to engagement rings and impression pendants and different things like that. And then I also work pretty closely with my father-in-law Jeff, and we have an expedition company together, and we dream up these wild adventures and kind of do them. So I'm a pretty active person as well, so always out kind of climbing or getting into the snow when I can. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. It's a bit of a weird kind of combination, but it works.
Tell us a little bit about how you started Ribs and Dust. I've personally seen the stuff, but for other people know the story, and
it all kind of started by accident. Funnily enough, I was kind of thinking about getting engaged, and I was kind of I suppose you're kind of going through that process of being like, how can I do something that's creative, that's going to be really special for my wife Jade. And so at the time I was shopping around and looking at different things, and I just found like nothing was really fully grabbing me. And then I happened to see a little advertisement just by chance for like a goldsmithing course. And I just thought to myself, wouldn't that be cool if I could like get in there and actually make the thing myself? And so I pretty much went in, and it was one of those things where it's like you make your own ring, and you might do a couple of lessons, and then you got your ring and you move on. And being a pretty direct person, I kind of went in and had a chat with the lady who's running it, and I was like, hey, I'm here to build an engagement ring, and she's like, oh, nice. And I was like, no, I'm serious, and she was like, oh, okay. We better get to work. And so over a period of probably 9 months, I worked pretty closely with her, just kind of developing the skills that I needed to make this ring that I had in my head. And then that was pretty much it. Like I made the ring, proposed. Where
did you propose?
In a hot air balloon. We got a mate of ours is a pilot. And so I was like, oh, it's going to be super obvious, like if I book out this private balloon and whatever, which we kind of had on the cards, and I was like, how am I going to throw her like a red herring to like put her off? So we went on like all of these dates beforehand that were like kind of which were like engagement-esque, but like just to kind of mess with her a bit.
Yeah.
And then I ended up calling her on a Tuesday night, and I was like, oh, we've got a couple of seats available in our mate's balloon, and it's full of Chinese tourists. So are you keen? And she's like, oh yeah, sure. And so we get there the next morning, we had like 20 Chinese tourists stuffed in the basket with us, and it was like, in a way it was so unromantic because we were kind of like sandwiched in, and then we like flew up, and then the pilot was chatting with the ground crew, and we got them to like drive ahead with the sign, and then like flip the sign over, and it was like, and Jade's eyesight's not great, so I was like telling her to look over the side. I was like, I was like, oh, what do you think that says? She's like, well, going down pretty early, maybe that's like the map we're landing on. And then I was like, how do I get down on one knee here? So I was kind of like awkwardly shooting in between
tourists.
So anyway, pop the question, and then as she goes to answer, Murray, the pilot, just like turns the flame on, which is like so noisy, and so I couldn't even hear what she said. I was just sitting there being like,
was that
is she crying? Is she smiling? I don't know. But so that was kind of that. And then from there, like, I guess tying back into the jewellery journey, it was really like job done. That was a really cool experience. And then we were pretty broke at the time. Just like, I was just finishing uni. Jade was still studying as well. And then we just make things for friends and family, just as a bit of, with some of the scrap metal that I had left over. And then I just kind of started developing this affinity for it and really getting into it. And then I suppose like anything, it just kind of started propagating. So we were like doing for friends and family, and then strangers, and now we send engagement rings and garlands all over the world. So it's been like a really wild ride. So
that being said, like obviously you're sending it around the world. What's some of the most interesting pieces that you've made in like a country that you just never would have expected to reach?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of stuff like right through the US and Europe, and we're kind of slowly ticking off countries. Some of the Eastern European countries have been kind of interesting, but probably a highlight for me was sending a wedding ring to a couple in Tanzania. So I was like, it was cool to like send something over there.
They send you like photos back of it.
Typically the weekends are pretty full of like cheeky messages from different people, and I feel like half my time these days is kind of spent like a secret agent, like always kind of people kind of covertly arranging their engagements and things, and then like
you're part of it.
A Saturday or a Sunday I'll get a message from someone kind of being like, we've done it, and you're like, it's cool. So it's actually probably one of my favourite aspects of the whole process is just getting to meet different people and hear their stories, and some kind of are pretty normal, and then some are totally unexpected, and so it's refreshing and I suppose nostalgic of why I got into it in the first place. So it's a really beautiful thing to be a part of for people.
And what sort of metals and stones are you working with?
All kind of high-end stuff, so like a lot of gold and diamonds and sapphires I really love, and a lot of black opal as well. Where do you see ribs and dust going? Like, what's your vision for it? Yeah, that's a great question. I suppose it's evolving, just like it has kind of from the beginning. Like it started out as like a hobby, which has then morphed into a business, and so I think like I've got an idea of what I wanted to do. Early on, I was kind of like chatting with Jade. I was like, oh, how cool would it be like if one day we could like make enough rings to like buy a cool house and do something fun like that. But I think as it grows, we're kind of looking at getting some team on now, and I'm still working that out a little bit, but we're just really enjoying the process. And I think probably for me personally, like if I if I'm too fixated on like a particular goal or whatever, my personality, I can tend to kind of miss what's happening in the moment a little bit.
Yeah.
So so as much as possible, like while we've got things that we're aiming for and striving to do, I think we're just trying to
live in
just be present and enjoy the process as much as we can as well. And then, like I said, I think meeting with different people and even some of the other opportunities that have come out of it, like, you know, being able to like commemorate a loved one or to, you know, take an impression of like a newborn or something like that. There's all of these kind of things that are happening around the space that I kind of wouldn't have anticipated initially, but those are a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And I think ultimately we're just focused on legacy. And I want my work to be transgenerational, and I want it to be timeless as much as possible. Obviously we're like making contemporary pieces in the game, but like I love the idea of something that can be passed on for generations, and so I think there's a really nice sense of legacy there. And and to know that your workmanship can kind of outlive you is a really cool thought for me.
That's beautiful. Probably the other side of who Simon is, and it's like more the athlete side or you know, the adventurous side. Tell us a little bit about your journey getting into that, and like where did it start?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I obviously my father-in-law is you know, got the record for the longest solo unsupported journey in history. So winding all the way back to kind of me dating Jane, that was, I guess, a bit of a trial by fire. My first kind of major expedition was in 2012 when we kiteboarded from Australia to Papua New Guinea. And that was a conversation that kind of started 3 months earlier, which was like a sit-down chat with Jeff and I. I didn't realise that he was kind of like, kind of testing me at the time. I thought he just wanted to like bond. But he's like, oh, how do you feel about kite surfing? And I was like, oh yeah, pretty good. And he goes, oh, what about if we just like kiteboarded from Australia to Papua New Guinea? And I was like, yeah, I guess like that's a bit weird, but yeah, we could give it a go. And then I suppose over a period of time, like we went from, you know, tackling that journey and then doing a bunch of polar training. Like he had one of these early Antarctic expeditions, and pretty soon I started realizing that I had this affinity and this ability to kind of do long, arduous journeys particularly in cold places. I suppose the running joke is that we're a bit like the Jamaican bobsled team. So the boys on the beach that keep stumping up to do cold journeys. So that's kind of where it started for me, and then it was pretty gradual, and I guess you just, you know, you just constantly chipping away and stretching this idea of resilience, and you constantly kind of pushing comfort zones. And just discovering new abilities along the way. And so it's been very incremental for me, but now it's certainly part of my lifeblood. And then we had a major expedition in 2017 where we were the first Australian team to cross Greenland south and north, which was really cool. So that was just Jeff and I. It was about 2,200
Some good
kilometres.
bonding time there.
Yeah, totally. So we've had plenty of time in the tent together. And then Jeff actually gave me permission to marry Jade in the jungle in New Guinea.
Is that after the kiteboarding?
Yeah. So, which was funny because I didn't even really ask him, but I suppose it all came out that he was like, you know, testing me to see if I was like worthy of his daughter, and see if there are like any skeletons in the closet.
Does this kid have endurance?
Pretty much. And then we were sitting around a fire, and he's like, you know, I've pushed you, and you know, tried to shake all the skeletons out of the closet, and you're a good man, and you can marry my daughter. And I was like, oh, awesome. It was cool.
But there's something about going through that experience and like sharing honesty and whatever, because you're quite vulnerable in a lot of, you know, those sort of times. So
absolutely.
Like, you're going to get something out of someone. It's a
totally.
Like that, right?
There's nothing quite like learning about the inner workings of the human being when they're under extreme duress.
Absolutely.
But I suppose when you can, you know, discover that you like can keep a pretty cool head in extreme conditions, then you actually get to enjoy that as well. And it's not for everyone, but but we love it. So
how do you think that has sort of shaped you as a person, like going through those times of having to be resilient and like just your everyday?
I think it's definitely a great reference point, and this idea of resilience I think is so crucial. Particularly even in what we're dealing with now with like a global pandemic and everything, where so many people are, having a really tough time at the moment, and then conversely there are people that are absolutely, going for it and doing really well. So it's like this weird kind of landscape, but you certainly need a lot of resilience to kind of like wake up every day unsure of like, what's going to be changing, like. And all of these different things. So I mean, I think it shaped me certainly. Even just changing some of my perspectives around what I thought I could do, what I thought I was capable of, like knowing what my body's capable of, like knowing when I'm kind of, when I think I'm done, when I'm actually done, like all of these kind of little things. We had a funny experience in the middle of the ocean when we were doing the Torres Strait crossing, and I get like really savage lactic acid, which is pretty typical of people that are quite tall, and so
wouldn't know.
So I'm like out on the ocean, my legs are like on fire, and I just felt like I was done. And then Jeff basically comes up, alongside me, and I just had cramps, and it was awful. And I suppose I hadn't really been pushed to the edge until that point. I'm like, Jeff, I think I need to get in the boat. And I think I'm done. And then he kind of started unpacking this idea in the middle of this like shark and croc infested stretch of water. We're bobbing around. He's like giving me a lecture. And he's talking about the fact that the human body is pretty much built with like a 30% reserve. So when you're done, your body is like, I'm finished. It's like your brain kind of, tricking you into knowing that there's like that survival reserve there. And like if you can just kind of access the key to kind of flip that switch, then you can access again and kind of go through that barrier. And you hear that with ultra runners and all of this.
David Goggins.
So, so that was like, he goes, right, I know you think you're done and I know you want to get into the boat, but we're just going to break it down into little increments for the rest of the journey. And besides, if you want to marry my daughter, you're going to make it to Papua New Guinea, you're not getting in the boat. And I was like, okay. So, but sure enough, like just breaking it down and just changing the way you look at things. It was like you get to rediscover something about yourself. And I don't think you really get the opportunity to do that without some level of hardship. And so certainly that's equipped me to, tackle different things, whether it's in business or my personal life or whatever. Now I've got like those physical benchmarks and reminders of kind of what you're capable of, and then I think it just gives you clarity and perspective, kind of navigating some of life's issues.
Well, on that, like having that clarity, I have sort of noticed that you have done some public speaking before in schools and things like that too, about great mental health and those sorts of things. Like how did that come about? Was that like post sort of expeditions and things like that? Or?
I mean, I've always been pretty happy in front of an audience. And I did like a bit of public speaking at school and whatever, and it was just, I know it's like a massive fear for some people, but I was just never really gripped by that. And I've always loved communicating, always loved chatting with people, and then I think really it was a bit of a byproduct of the journeys that I'd taken. And kind of, I guess like, so one of the things I talk about in schools and different audiences is kind of my life as a crash test dummy, because I kind of feel like that a little bit. Like I pretty much just said yes to some crazy things, even though I didn't really know what the outcome was going to be. And I just love having a crack, and then a lot of the time I've had some really great results, and like I haven't always done well with everything that I've tried, but
it's okay to fail.
Totally. But I think giving yourself that permission just to have a go, and at least come the end of your life, you're like, I just gave it my best, and I feel like that's all you can do. And it's like I think the most dangerous and kind of scary position to get into in life is that sense of regret or kind of going, oh, what if I just tried that, or what if I just stepped out and had a go. And I know we've all got different kind of appetites for risk and things, and certainly mine has incrementally increased over time, not just physically, but just kind of it's been an interesting kind of journey. But I suppose there's some of the things that I chat about with with people surrounding mental health is just you can apply yourself and kind of discover new levels of resilience, and you just jump in and have a crack.
Yeah, I like that. Like sort of saying just jump in and have a crack, and obviously like you and I were speaking briefly last week about some ideas you have around like opening people's eyes to like how they can access some of these sort of extreme sports and not be classes like that extreme, like your rock climbing, for instance. It's what do you see like sort of needs to happen in that environment in terms of like making that sort of stuff accessible? Do you want to touch on that?
I think the biggest thing for whether it's in business or whether it's planning something extreme or taking up a new hobby or whatever, is planning well. So I think you can really set yourself up for a win by connecting yourself with the right people. And I feel like if you're like, oh hey, I'm gonna go and try base jumping. I just bought a rig off Goodburn and I'm gonna find a cliff and have a go. Like you're not really setting yourself up for a win there. And so for us, like learning rock climbing, like we're still relatively new to the sport, but we're connecting with people that are passionate and awesome at rock climbing, and then we're just kind of equipping ourselves with the safety and the skills that we need to prevent injury and to kind of excel in the sport. And then it just means that your learning curve is really enjoyable. So even though you start at a base level and you're not necessarily all that good, you can actually really enjoy the learning curve if you're equipped to succeed and if you've got the right people around you and if you've kind of planned it out well. And same with the business, and same with like all the jewelry stuff that we're doing. Like I've got the right people around me, people that I admire and respect, whether it's kind of designers or suppliers or people that are in the industry that I kind of look up to, that are able to kind of able to use a sounding board. And so I think that's probably one of the keys, is just like planning well, but partnering with the right people to kind of help you on that journey, whatever that looks like.
I know like within our business we love the idea of creating a community of like really good people, and the interesting thing about these conversations is that you dip your toe into other people's worlds, and part of the conversation I wanted to have was like us dealing with good people in other industries are dealing with good people too, and like who would be someone that you've dealt with or met along your journey that is like a good person or like been a role model to you, to sort of lead you
within the jewellery sphere?
Or the adventure sort of side of things as well. I mean, obviously Jeff's a big one, but
okay, I'll give you two. So adventure wise, he's dead, but he's someone who I've read a lot of his work on what he's done. It's a Norwegian explorer called Fridtjof Nansen.
Okay.
And so Roald Amundsen was the first to the South Pole. He was a Norwegian explorer.
Yeah.
And then everyone kind of knew him as like the godfather of like polar exploration. But then he was actually like the underling of Fridtjof Nansen. Who was like, he was the man. And he just like reading through some of his diaries and excerpts and things are just, have just inspired me so much. And that was part of the catalyst behind the Greenland journey. Is he tackled that journey when he was the same age I was, at 27. Like in, it was 1898 or something ridiculous. Can't remember off the top of my head, but he basically did like an east to west journey to unlock this new part of Greenland, which would have been absolutely terrifying back then with no technology and whatever. But just like this pure passion and sense of adventure was just something that I really admire, and thought, well, if he can do it back then I can definitely do it now. So kind of drawing some inspiration
that's cool.
from that. And then in the jewellery world, I've got a an old friend who's been on the tools for probably 50 plus years.
Yeah, right.
Guy called Telmakis.
Okay.
And I use him as a bit of a sounding board, kind of when I hit various roadblocks. And then another really good friend of mine, a guy called Paul Mallers. He's a younger guy, but he's one of my really dear friends. And he's been in the industry for a long time, and I connect with him really regularly on all different aspects of the thing. And he's just a great example of just an integrous guy who's amazing at what he does, and
that's cool.
Just thinks outside the box, and so it really inspires me in that world.
Yeah, awesome. Another question that we're going to ask everyone in these interviews is, dead or alive, like who would you love to sit down and have a brew with?
Yeah.
And why? You probably already mentioned.
I think definitely someone like Friedhof Nansen would be. It's so hard to pick one. I've got a whole bunch, but I think for the sake of today's context, Friedhof Nansen would be amazing to kind of sit down with and just to pick his brain.
I was gonna say, what would you ask him?
Oh, it's so hard, isn't it? Maybe what he would have done differently. If he had his time again.
Yeah. How did he die? Exploring.
Just of age, I'm pretty sure. Like one of the cool things about Nansen was he just everything he did was just so successful because he was such a meticulous planner.
Yeah. Right.
And like there are a whole bunch of like English expeditions that ended in disaster and ended in injury, and then you read a lot of his accounts, and like his teams would they would put on weight and they would come back like fat and rosy cheek from like doing these awful journeys, and so to me there was like a pretty clear distinction of like this idea that like in that environment any fool can be uncomfortable, but because he planned it all so well and everything, he was just like discomfort wasn't like a badge of honor. It was like, hey, you didn't plan for this properly, and so I'd probably be inclined to have a chat with him about some of those things, I think, because I suppose that's something that we now take into all the other aspects of my life. But
what's next in your adventure world?
We've got a journey up north. That's kind of in the workings at the moment. I can't go into explicit detail about, but it's and it's something certainly that terrifies me and excites me all in the same sense. And it's funny because I kind of feel like I can't really impart to others, unless I'm kind of pushing myself according to my limits and boundaries as well now. And so that's, it feels like the next kind of really audacious challenge that is like equally as exciting as terrifying. But
what's the timing on that? Can you say that?
Well, we're kind of just in the planning phase at the moment, and it could be a couple of years. I mean, particularly in light of travel restrictions and everything, who knows when things will open up properly again. But I mean, I suppose it's an opportunity to get the planning done now. When we're kind of forced to sit and work on things, and then we'll hopefully be kind of ready to pull the trigger on it in a couple of years. So.
And we're obviously, for people listening to this conversation, they're probably pretty intrigued and interested to follow along. Now's a chance for a bit of a shameless plug. Like, man, where can they follow you? Where can they find you on Ribs and Dust? So you can just find us at Ribs and Dust for all of the jewellery thing. We post a lot of our work on there, and then probably just me personally, Simon Goodburn. Or Dr. Jeff Wilson. Kind of we'll be leaking things out along the journey as well. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for having us in your studio in your home, mate.
Really
pleasure. Appreciate the conversation.
Cheers,
mate. Thanks.